Hey guys, Steph Mischuk with StudioWeb.com and Killer Sites. I mention Studio Web a lot because that's my new interactive training program. K-12 schools are using it, community colleges are using it, career centers are using it now, so I'm quite happy about that. Anyway, enough with the promotion. So in this video I want to discuss, quickly talk about what 20 years of web designing and web programming, what perspective could I bring to you after 2 decades now? It's unbelievable. I built my first website in 1994 from our import-export business that I had at the time. I started business when I was really young. And I built it not because I wanted to be a web designer. It's just that this web thing came out, and I wanted to reach clients overseas. And my brother actually approached me and said, "Hey, you should build a website." And I said, "Well, what's a website?" Anyhow, so over the years, I've seen all these cycles, all these trends go through. And I just want to give you some perspective. So just in case you're new to this or you've just been in this for a few years, to help you to navigate the changes in the web world. Now, the web itself is stabilizing quite a bit in that the technology is becoming much more mature than it used to be. Back 10, 15 years ago, it was changing very rapidly because nobody knew exactly how it was going to work out, and there was all these wars, these battles between like Netscape versus Microsoft and so on. So let me describe a couple of big patterns. You're going to see the technology battles, where you're going to see one programming language will become the must-know programming language of the day. And like, oh, that's it, it's going to change the world, and everything's going in this direction. And then if a year or two later or 3 years later, then, well, no, actually, this is the key language, and so on. So you see these battles brew. And I'll mention a couple, like the original big tech battle I can remember, at least within the context of the web, is the browser wars. You had Internet Explorer versus Netscape and the back and forth. And eventually, Internet Explorer won. And then, I'll fast forward. Then you had Java Applets. Now, Applets are kind of like Java applications that ran in the browser. You embedded it in the browser. And because of all the browser wars, people said, well, we need some unified method of creating applications. So the Java community, the Sun, which owned Java at the time, created Applets, which kind of like Flash embeds. And that's sort of, the idea was that, it would work consistently across browsers. Of course, it didn't work out that way. There's all kinds of problems with Applets I'm not going to get into. And then after this push for Applets, which really never didn't fulfill its promise, as I said, then everybody went back to the browser. No, it's DHTML, and everybody's going to go the web browser now. And again, that was DHTML was the precursor to DOM scripting, which you see today. And then Flash came in. Flash. Oh yeah, everybody's Flash. Again, it was always an answer to the fact that the browsers, these technologies just mentioned, rather, it was always a factor of the browsers not playing evenly. Eventually, because of the web standards movement, a bunch of web design nerds got together, Jeffrey Zellman and some others, and they basically pushed the major manufacturers, Internet Explorer and so on, Microsoft and so on, to basically play by the W3C rules. Now, they went a little crazy with XHTML. XHTML is the best. Forget about HTML. Of course, I never believed that. And you can look it up. Look back in the early 2000s. I argued against XHTML. I knew it wasn't good. I knew it was going to fail because it had some fundamental problems. It made it more difficult, basically, to work with JavaScript, to work with the DOM. And IE didn't support it, so you couldn't use XHTML, really. Anyway, HTML5 came out. That sort of killed the XHTML thing, so now HTML5 is all in. Flash is dead. Anyway, the point is, you see all these technologies change constantly. There's these wars back and forth, Ruby and PHP and Java and C and .NET, yada yada. All these technologies have their places, at some point in time. Some will last a while. I think like Ruby will be here for a while, Python, of course PHP, big time, etc. There's a bunch of things, that will last quite a while, but a lot of technologies will disappear and go into the niche, like Java Applets. You never see Java Applets anymore. Trust me, back in the late 90s, Java Applets were everywhere. So what can you take away from this? First of all, I've given this advice before. Number one, do not get married to a technology. Don't fall in love with a technology thinking, that's it, this is what I'm going to use for the rest of my life. It doesn't work that way. If you want to be successful in this game, you got to be ready to dump a technology that's now is getting old, you know. So that's what you want to do. So you got to be prepared to leave. So for instance, Ruby became pretty popular largely as a result of a big movement of Java people who had enough of Java, because Java was designed by committee. And meaning all these big organizations, IBM and Microsoft and Sun, they're all involved, and a whole bunch of others, BEA, and Java became this huge bloated beast, and it became very difficult to work with. So a lot of people took off from Java and went into the Ruby community, and that fed the rise of Ruby, I think, and then Ruby on Rails came along, blah 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 blah. So. Never get married to a technology. Be prepared to migrate to something that's better. Now, just because, for instance, if you were a Java expert, and that was my thing, Java, that was my favorite language, although I've programmed in many languages, I was prepared to drop Java when I saw that it was just getting too stupid. I just left it. And it's not like you're losing out on all your Java skills. All that programming skill that you get in Java, or you get in PHP or Ruby or whatever language, it will translate into the next language that you learn, the next environment that you jump into. Same with frameworks. You may be a code igniter guy, and you're seeing code igniters getting killed now. And everybody's moving on. I think Laravel is going to be the big one. And, you know, that's fine. Don't worry, you know, your code igniter skills will do you good in Laravel. So just be prepared to move on. You know, I wouldn't be too worried about that. What's my notes here? What else can I tell you? After 20 years, usability is still huge. You know, at the end of the day, whatever your backend technology is, Ruby, PHP, ASP.NET, Java, whatever. At the end of the day, how usable your website or your web apps are, how easy they are to use, is still something that holds true 20 years later. It will be still true 20 years from now. So having the skills to develop a very highly usable site is extremely valuable, and it will transcend time, in decades, in fact. You know, the basic principles of usability are applicable whether you're using a desktop computer or whether you're using an iPhone or iPad or whatever other device that comes down the road. So again, invest in learning usability, I think. And finally, the oldest rule of the web, and I think they got it from publishing, it's called content is king. At the end of the day, you can have the best coded website, and it can be extremely usable, but if the content sucks, it's worthless. So, you know, how important content is, you know, depend, you know, if it's a banking site, well, you know, how, you know, content, you know, whatever, it's just banking. But, you know, most sites, you know, whether it be an online store or, you know, blog or whatever, you have to have good content. So there you go. After 20 years, don't marry technology. Usability is super important, and content will always be king. And yeah, that's pretty much it.